Is it possible this skinny 14-year-old killed 4 people? He confessed to it.
I started shooting them with my men. Is that correct?
But here's the problem. So did this guy.
Did you hit somebody in there?
Yes.
Male, female, what?
3 guys, and I believe a female in the house.
It's rare for police to get one confession in such a heinous crime. But 2 people come forward, both claiming to be the killer?
How many times have you shot your gun?
What did you use here?
AK-47.
And here's the other big question in this case of dueling murder confessions. Was the right guy sent to prison?
How does something like this happen?
For 10 years, I was a crime reporter in Detroit, and I can tell you a shooting on the city's east side isn't all that uncommon. But 4 young people gunned down with an AK-47 assault rifle, that's a big story.
Quadruple homicides don't happen very often. It is a very major crime.
The murder of 3 men and 1 woman became known as the Runyan Street Slayings. Detroit police initially believe it's a robbery gone horribly wrong.
It was in the headlines, it was in the press, and I think the police felt a lot of pressure to solve it and solve it quickly.
The most shocking headline was who Detroit police said pulled the trigger. A 14-year-old half-blind special education teenager roaming the neighborhood in his pajamas.
The kid, they convinced themselves somehow knew something about this crime. Bingo, close the case, no muss, no fuss.
14-year-old Davonte Sanford saw cop lights and yellow police tape at the neighbor's house. His mom, Taminko, tells our Andrea Isom he just wanted to go see what was going on.
You said don't go. He did. And then the nightmare began.
Basically, going outside cost him his life, going outside cost him his youth, cost him his innocence, cost him everything just by going outside.
Police first noticed Davonte after a police dog sniffing for clues wandered up to Davonte in a park adjacent to the crime scene. Cops asked the shivering 14-year-old if he saw anything.
Initially, he said that he knew something about the killers, and he named some kids in the neighborhood he thought might have been involved.
Attorney David Moran says around 4 o'clock in the morning, police asked permission from Davonte's grandmother to take him down to the station to answer more questions. She signs off for the teenager to go alone.
For reasons that I cannot possibly figure out, the police decided that he had something to do with the murder and interrogated him that night without an adult present.
Police chose not to videotape Davonte's first interrogation.
Tell me what those interrogations were like for him.
For a 14-year-old boy alone, without an adult present, it must have been terrifying.
They eventually take Davonte home, but later that night they come back to pick up the teenager again for more questioning.
They said, no, we know that you know more about this than you're letting on. We think you were involved. And so he tells them what they want to hear. And he tells them this story that's just baloney.
According to police reports, after hours on the hot seat, Davonte tells them he and 3 buddies went to rob the house and ended up shooting 4 people inside.
He said that they threw the guns in a grassy lot as they ran away from the killings, and no guns were found there. So everything was wrong. Everything was wrong, which is a sure sign that they were barking up the wrong tree.
But the final nail for Davonte? A detective says Davonte drew this diagram of the murder scene and marks exactly where each victim was shot. Now look closely. This is a drawing by a detective at the crime scene. Side by side, you can see the location of the bodies is nearly identical. That information is something police say only the killer would have known.
Police relentlessly, hour after hour, will tell the person, we know you did it, we know you're not saying it, you're not telling the truth, until eventually they get them to talk. And then once they get them to talk, they turn on the camera.
As soon as we got out the car, we ran up on the front yard and started busting at the house. Everyone shot their gun at the house from the outside. We all ran up on the porch and went inside. Is that all correct?
That's the back of Davonte's head. He's only 14, so police don't show his face.
And I started shooting him with my men. Okay. Is that correct? Yes.
Remember, the teenager reportedly could only read on a 3rd grade level, so the detective asks simple yes or no questions.
How many times have you shot your gun? I'm not sure, but I would say about 9 to 10 times. Is that correct?
Yes.
Has anyone threatened or promised you anything for your statement? And your answer was?
No.
and they get what looks like a convincing confession.
24 hours later, Detroit police closed the case of the Runyan Street murders. They've caught their killer.
With that confession, and seemingly that confession alone, Davonte Sanford was convicted of murdering 4 people. He was sentenced to 37 to 90 years in prison. His family was in shock.
When you heard conviction, then up to 90 years, did it take your breath away?
Yes. I was in a hallway in a courthouse that I can remember just hollering and screaming.
But less than a month later, a bombshell that should have blown this closed case wide open. A self-professed hitman, 25-year-old Vincent Smothers, tells Detroit cops he's been on a killing spree.
He says, look, you got me, I'm a hitman, He said, turn on the cameras and I'll tell you about all the hits I've committed.
Did you kill anybody in there?
I'm sure 3 guys who did.
How about the female?
I'm not sure.
What did you use here?
AK-47.
But detectives were not expecting this.
It's on Runyan with the street.
He starts on tape, videotape, in graphic, extraordinarily accurate detail describing 12 murders that he committed, including the 4 on Runyan Street.
Up next, police are baffled. They've got a 14-year-old kid in jail for a quadruple murder and a hitman claiming he's the real killer.
What's made you tell them this?
Did they convict the wrong guy?
This is about as egregious as it gets.